Have you ever felt lost, confused, or indecisive, and then suddenly a feather just appeared in your path, and instantly you just knew the answer to all of your questions? Or maybe friends and family keep buying you animal themed things, and you're wondering, why do I have like 10 pairs of frog knickers or owl cushions? And you want to understand, why is this animal turned up in my life? Or perhaps an animal has appeared to you in a dream and you're wondering, what does this symbolize? What does this mean? How can this help me with my current challenge or obstacle? This is why I have created the YouTube series Animal with myself and guests. It's going to offer you insight into what is the magic, the myth, the medicine of the animal kingdom. What does it mean to have a spirit guide that is a particular animal, and how can they support you in your life's journey, in your healing, and in your connection to self? So whether you are seeking an animal guide, or you want to understand yours better, or maybe even yourself better, or perhaps you're just curious about the symbology, the mythology, the wisdom, medicine, and magic of animals, then this is the perfect series of interviews for you. An easy and accessible way to understand the relevance of animal spirit guides to you, along with practical tips and tools for integrating the wisdom of animals into your everyday life and into your spiritual practice. Now let us fly, gallop, and dive into this episode and the support and inspiration that will empower you. Hey, so welcome to this episode of Animal, which explores the myth, the magic, and the medicine of our animal guides and spirits. So in this episode, I have the wonderful Dodie with me. And Dodie is a writer, green witch, and filmmaker. She is inspired to document and share stories that capture the beauty of nature and the visible and invisible realms of magic and witchcraft. She is the author of the books Earth Magic and The Witch's Ally, and her documentary films include The Winnie Pagans, Starry Nights, and a 4-part series exploring the sacred. Dodie spends her spare time walking her dogs, one of which hopefully we're going to meet. he's going to pop up, teaching witchcraft and facilitating a busy coven. So welcome, Dodie, and she's going to be sharing about dogs.
Hi there. Yes, and my little dog Georgia is joining us today too. She likes to sit on my lap. So here's Georgia.
We have our mascot sponsoring and supporting our space with the spirit of dog. I'm so excited for you to be sharing about dogs. I think we all love dogs. They play a very, very special part in so many people's lives, and they're a truly great example of the animal kingdom being in service to us, supporting us, with health, with well-being, with spirituality. So let's begin with exploring we know that dogs are important to us, but if we wanted to connect a dog as a spirit animal, what makes them unique as an animal guide?
When I think of the way I look at animals that we work with, either physical animals or animals from the spirit world, I use different language to describe that. Like a dog like Georgia here, who's like a real dog that lives in my house and freeloads off my groceries. She isn't necessarily very magical. She's her big attraction to magic is that sometimes there's food around and she wants to eat it. So she's very, very much a pet. She's and that word is not being meant in a derogatory word or to belittle her role in my life. A beloved pet is somebody who absolutely lives in your home and you get great pleasure from living with and coexisting with. Animals that are magically inclined, and I definitely had a dog like that. He's since died, but he was the inspiration behind me writing The Witch's Ally. He was very much a magical companion, and I really looked at him as my companion in magic. And now that he's died, he died in 2017, and it was like horrible, horrible grief beyond anything I've ever experienced. Um, he's kind of ascended, you know, from being like a physical animal companion, and he's entered that sort of spirit realm, and he's become an animal familiar to me.
Mm.
And I like using the word familiar to describe those kinds of animals because it is a word that belongs to witchcraft. And I like being able to take the words that belong to witchcraft and use them and give them more power and more meaning and more depth. So you know, that's how I will describe the relationships. And you know, having a dog either as a magical companion, a pet, or an animal familiar, um, you know, that gives you the possibility to have a relationship that isn't just about service. It's also about uh, enhancing the abilities. What I lack, dog has, and what dog lacks, I have, right? And being able to see the world through the eyes of a creature that isn't a human, taking it away from this human-centric existence and giving space for, you know, in this case, dog to come through and grant us an ability to kind of see things from their point of view, the way they smell, the way they hear, you know, the way they can sense things beyond our abilities.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing but magic to that for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was something, a journey I went on when I adopted Oben. He was only 6 months old, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm allergic to dogs. I was temporary insanity led me to just impulsively adopting this dog that I just knew in a very core level. That was my dog, and I was his person. We had to be together, and that was the end of it. And we were for 16 years. It was amazing. So,
Yeah, they show up when they're meant to, don't they? And often, you
yes.
know, I find that with people who are kind of spirit guides, animal companions, that they know, they have this knowing that they come to us, and then we start looking into it and we realize something by their presence. But they have this kind of like this higher knowing that they just have this, I need to go to that person. I need to go and do. I need to go wake them up, or go and chase them. But yeah, I love that you've got these animals that have been on both levels for you, on the physical and the spiritual. And as you were sharing, then I remember something that I used to share with I think I mentioned it once with my students, about how, you know, when you're greeted by a dog, they just like, you know, you're greeted by your family, they'll be like, oh hi, how are you? But a dog is like full pure adoration, and they run at you, and they can't wait to see you. And I always, you know, kind of like I said, I shared with my students, what if we were like that with ourselves? Like, what if we met ourselves like that, with that same kind of, oh wow, you're so amazing, and I can't wait for the treats you're going to give me. You're wonderful, and you can do nothing wrong. Imagine if we kind of offered that us, you know, to ourselves.
It's that unconditional kind of, you know, appreciation. You know, it's so rare in the world,
Mm.
and all you have to do to earn that from a dog is be a good person to that dog, and they will be happy to see you, you know. Um, and that can be also hard. You know, there's plenty of people who are, you know, not great, or in fact shitty to animals and their dogs. But a dog will still make time for you. And and you know, by the same stroke, I would say, if my dog has a problem with somebody, if my dog doesn't want to approach somebody or meet them, I take that absolutely into consideration, because without fail, whenever I've investigated past that, it's usually a good reason for it. You know, that dog is telling you, giving you a clear message to stay away. And, you know, listen, you know, you don't necessarily know better. That dog is sensing things that you can't sense. So respect that. Take it in hand.
Yeah. And I remember like you saying that. I remember like my friend had a dog, and I remember this dog coming up to sniff me with his head in my crotch. And my friend was like, "Are you on your period?" Because she only does that when you're on your period. And I was like, "Gosh, how does the dog know?" Obviously, it's that keen sense of smell, but also I was like, this dog had this instinct to kind of comfort women, when they were having period pains. And I was like, wow, they just have this, you know, we think so much all the time, don't we? We're constantly analyzing and trying to put logic behind things. And perhaps do you think that they can inspire us to um, not kind of come out the mind, perhaps, and come more into the body and just kind of trust our instinct and intuition?
Well, dogs live in a very sensual world. You know, their sense of their sense of smell, their sense of hearing. You know, their vision isn't as good as the way they can smell or hear, but you know, they can smell it on you. You know, they can hear something coming way before we can. You know, watching how a dog reacts to a situation is a really good indicator of what's imminently on your doorstep, and it gives you a distant early warning to react in a way that might protect you. I'll give you an example. When Obenon was about 4 or 5 years old, we lived in a very nice neighborhood. It was kind of the groovy artsy neighborhood of my hometown here in Winnipeg. And we went out for a walk one summer night. It was probably around 10 o'clock at night, but long summer nights, very warm and lovely, very enticing to go outside. So I was kind of lulled by that sense of safety that I know my neighborhood, it's a beautiful summer night, the streets are quiet. This will be a great time to walk down these leafy residential streets with my dog. And I went sort of our normal route, nothing outrageous or strange to my perception. But I went to turn to walk down a street we walked down quite regularly, and he wouldn't go. There was no way that he was going to budge. And he stood on the sidewalk in front of me with his legs locked, staring straight into the sort of darker part of the street. And he would not move. And when I tried to drag him and come on, let's go, this is our walk, he actually growled at me and wouldn't let me walk past him. So I'm like, okay, you win. So we turned around and we went a different direction. And we walked maybe, I don't know, 20 meters. And I glanced back over my shoulder, and walking out of that street that I tried to turn down was this really kind of disheveled and big and kind of scary looking man. And he stood on the sidewalk and watched us walk away. And I thought, did Open just save my skin back there? Wow. He could see beyond what I could see. He could sense well beyond what I could sense. And had I not listened to him, maybe something bad would have happened to us. You got to listen when dogs give you a message, and be open to the fact that they know stuff that you don't know.
Wonderful. Thank you, doggies.
Yes.
Aren't they wonderful? They really are. So if, say, a dog came to somebody as their spirit guide, as kind of their, I don't know, came in their dreams, or they started seeing the dog kind of symbol around, the image kept coming up, or they kept feeling like there was a dog presence with them. What do you think it would mean? Kind of what's the message behind that? Is there a reason why a dog spirit guide in particular would turn up, for someone?
I think that's going to be an individual assessment, because some people have a natural affinity with dogs, and some people have never lived with a dog that doesn't. What is a dog? So you have to kind of look at what the symbol of dog means to you. If a dog is a regular, maybe you live with a dog, or a regular occurrence in your life, is it a dog that coming to you from through the ether? Is this dream dog one you recognize? My late dog Oben comes to me in dreams, And I know what that means to me. That is a magical message. That is him communicating some kind of message to me. And sometimes it's a warning, and sometimes it's a reassurance, and sometimes it's just a visit, right? So when it's Oban coming to me in a dream or in a vision, I'm falling back into that old relationship with him that we had when he was alive, and I'm making my judgments based on that. Rarely does any other dog come to me, but when a strange dog or a dog I can't name shows up, I would start to look at it like I'd want to know context. And then I would think about, well, what do dogs see that I don't see? And that's where I start exploring. What am I not hearing? What am I not smelling? What am I not? Is there loyalty issues here? Is there some kind of betrayal or extraordinary loyalty that I should be looking for? And I look at the characteristics, like the classic canine characteristics, and start going there for information about what that message might be. Loyalty comes up a lot. Loyalty / betrayal. A dog is an extraordinarily loyal and malleable kind of creature in our lives. They can be taught things that serve us, but we also have to reciprocate that with being, good trainers and good teachers to the dog.
Yeah. It sounds like dogs would be like a really good kind of like relationship counselor.
That's true. Well, you think about it, I like reading about dog psychology and there's such a spectrum within dogs. This little terrier that's sitting on my lap right now is harumphing because I'm not sitting the right way for her. She is not as patient with me as Oban was. Terriers aren't like that. Terriers have their own disposition. Oban was a husky crossed with a bunch of things. He kind of looked a bit like if Snoopy was wearing a husky suit. He had that kind of Snoopy nose, and I'm sure that he liked to dance like Snoopy did. So he being sort of a bit of a mutt and having very strong husky characteristics, and then this whole unknown gene pool gave him a very, very different disposition. And just like people, there's so many different kinds of folks in the world. There's so many different types of dogs, and matching those personalities and understanding what breeds have different character types, really good to know. And understanding that that's going to also factor in the chemistry between you and a particular type of dog might not work.
Yeah. I always remember like you remember in 101 Dalmatians in the Disney film, and they were looking out the window and all the dogs look like their owners. And it's a saying, isn't it, that the dog reflects the owner, looks like their owner. So when you ask somebody what their favorite breed of dog is, it's a reflection of their own kind of personality. Sometimes even the way they look, we end up looking like our pets.
Well, I think Georgia and I do have, considerably the same kind of messy hairdos. So maybe that's coming on here.
It's like who's inspired who. So it sounds like dogs have been like, really present in your life, for quite a long time. So have dogs always been present as just in the physical realm or in the spiritual realm? Did you first meet, dogs in the spirit realm, or did they come to you first physically? When did that kind of connection on a deeper level first happen?
Well, like I think I mentioned, I'm allergic to dogs. There's certain times that I have to take antihistamines just to live in my house. It's just part of the give and take of this relationship. But when I was little, my grandparents had a couple of dogs, and they were pretty significant in our family. But I didn't actually really gel and connect until the day I met Oban. And I talk about that meeting and that happening in my book, A Witch's Ally. I mean, he came out of nowhere. and hit me like a thunderbolt. And the connection was so strong, and so like the air was thick with it. He was 6 months old. He was in a pet shelter. I happened to be going to that pet store to buy food for my turtle. And I decided to go take a look at the cats because I like cats and I had some cats at home. And I just thought, oh, I'll look at the cats in the shelter. And one of the kennels actually held this dog. And the second I looked at him and we made direct eye contact with each other. That was it. I was single-minded in getting that pup to come home with me. And my husband at the time had to be convinced. He thought I was joking. He'd seen me break out in hives around dogs. So there was a lot of questions I had to answer to justify that. But it was this unbreakable bond had been forged in a few moments in the pet store. And, 4 days later, I brought him home. And it was the beginning of a really, really strong relationship. And by the time Oben was about 3, he'd developed some pretty serious medical issues. He was epileptic. So that had to be managed. And learning how to keep him healthy and keep him, safe from having grand mal seizures was a whole process of medication and trying to find medication that wouldn't do other complications that would decrease his quality of life, and looking at things from his point of view and literally getting down on the floor to his eye level and looking at what could be dangerous, what could be a problem if he had a seizure, what would I have to think about. I would do this for a human friend. If I had a small child in my house, I would toddler proof it, right? That's what sensible, responsible people would do. So I had to do that for him. And in that process, I began to open my eyes to the way he was seeing the world and the things that would make him happier or more comfortable or benefit him. And the happier and more comfortable he was, the more he was able to give back to me. And that was it wasn't about one of us being over the other. It was about us meeting in an equal place and allowing life to open up for both of us in a better way. I mean, I started eating better because I didn't have to. I was given the choice by a really wonderful veterinarian that was helping us. I was given the choice. She said, one of the things you could try is managing his diet better. And a homemade dog food diet he would really benefit from that. But it is a big commitment, and I understand. I'm like, no, tell me more. So in learning about nutrition for him, I learned more about nutrition generally. And I started eating better because I was making home-cooked meals for my dog. And that opened my eyes to what vegetables can dogs digest better. Oh, I've never thought of eating, sweet potatoes, like that before. Maybe I'll do it too. So I became a healthier, happier person. And I also had that sharing that I was doing with him. I remember a friend of mine came by my house one afternoon and I was roasting a chicken in the oven, and I was vegetarian. So my friend came in and went, wow, like you're eating chicken. Like, this is amazing. Like, can I have some? I'm like, no, actually it's for Oben. Because I would, cook these lovely meals, and, some of it we would share, some of it would be for him, but it was just a really nice ritual of, care, what a better way to say you love somebody than to make them a nice meal, I shouldn't say that in front of Georgia because she has a half and half home cooked / kibble diet. Sorry, you will get some chicken soon, I promise.
Yeah, she'll be getting jealous. Yeah, dogs do seem to have like this unique place, don't they, as more than just kind of animals and kind of just living on this earth. They really become our friends and companions. And this is something kind of I've always said as like a a vegetarian to like my meat eater friends, like, but you've got a dog. Like, how can you eat a chicken? And they're always like, yeah, but a dog's different. Like, they're like extra level. And for me, I've always kind of felt like I feel the same about a chicken as I do about a dog. But they do have like this kind of I mean, it's been known, hasn't it, for thousands of years that we've had this intimate kind of very, very special connection with dogs more than any other animal. Yeah, and it just I find that fascinating. Like, why is it being dogs, But
Well, it is such an interesting mystery. Dogs are
Mm,
so smart. They figured out that if they hung around humans, that they would get something out of the relationship too. Food being an obvious one, but also they get their ears scratched. You know, they have they have a family, they have a pack when they're with us. You know, one of the things about dogs that I really found it hard to learn. I'm a tactile person. I like to pet my dogs, and I like to cuddle with them. And like dogs don't really like being hugged, or do they? Or do they? What I learned is that I have a very human centric way of viewing what a hug is.
yeah.
Dogs have their own way of doing it. So when I go to bed at night, I want to grab Georgia and I want to wrap her up in my arms and just like kiss her all over her face and cuddle her. She hates that. What I find is if I go and crawl into bed at night and I get all safe and comfortable in my blankets, Georgia will come. She'll flop down next to me. She'll press against me with her back and just put pressure. That's her way of hugging me. It's not the human way of hugging, but it's how dogs will do it. They'll lay back to back with each other in a pile,
Yeah.
and that way they can guard and they can keep an eye out. But they also have the comfort of pressing their backs against you. And what I've come to love now is I can't sleep unless I've got Georgia pressed up against my back with her back, because it's spooning,
Yeah.
but that's how dogs do it. And meeting her on her terms for that, there was an adjustment period because it's not how I think about cuddling up, but it's how dogs do. And I met her where she is on that, and I'm used to it, right? So if I ever meet you in person and I walk up to you and turn around and press my back against you, maybe I've just forgotten myself for a moment. But there's other ways that creatures reach out to us, but you have to be receptive to meeting them in their place.
Maybe they're a really good example too, is then of kind of sharing, really being clear in our communication about what we want, because a dog will, when they want their belly rubbing, because they will roll
Yeah.
over and expose their belly. Cats, they're like, here's my chin, like, please touch my chin. If you touch their bellies, they're often like, go away right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because my books I've written about wolves, and obviously wolves have that connection to dogs, and it makes me think about like wolves especially have this real kind of message and medicine about boundaries, about being
Mm-hmm.
really clear and communicating about what's okay and what isn't. But to be able to communicate what you want, you've first got to know what you want, so you've got to kind of come into that knowing and embody that, understand that, and then you can communicate clearly what those boundaries should be. And it really sounds that dogs also could help, with that, if somebody was wanting to kind of like often people just don't know how to ask for touch or the touch that they want. Some people like, don't hug me, but they want to be touched. And it's getting clear on, so it's your love language, isn't it, and how you
Mm-hmm.
communicate and how you want that back.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up wolves. There are domestic dogs. Not so distant relations. And both types of creature, they have a very distinct, pack mentality. Everybody has their place within the unit. Like you think about how a pack of wolves will organize themselves, even when they're moving together over the landscape, or when they're relaxing together. Dogs have a tamer version of that too, and the difference is we're included in it. How does what's my role in George's pack? um, I know it has a lot to do with food, but it also has to do with affection and grooming. She loves it. If I pick up her brush, she gets all full of knots in her fuzzy fur. She likes that. I have a role to play in that part of her life, and she tries to reciprocate by licking me, and then I break out in hives, and that's okay. But we have a part to play in our dog's pack. And for some of us, like when I lived alone with Oben, we were a pack of two. And I often wondered how that felt for him, because that's against his nature, I think. Especially being one of his parents at least was a husky, and he would have had a certain drive and a working mindset based on that. And I often wonder if it was frustrating for him that our pack was so small. Their friends would come through the house and come and go. And when my husband and I got together and my stepsons came to live with us, our pack got bigger. But I often wonder if he missed having more canine pack members. I know things changed around here for our first dog, when Georgia came into the picture. She was a pandemic baby. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently when I was a child, my brother was born when I was 4 years old, and I proper sulked. I actually ran away, and I was adamant I was not having a brother, and I was like, nope, this is not happening. I'm not having a brother in my pack. I wanted sisters. And you imagine, like, gosh, you can, like, when a dog's introduced to, like, our neighbor's had a dog that she got recently, and it's a huge dog. And her cat is so miffed about it. Like, it's like, I've been kicked out of my house. I've been kicked out of cuddles.
Aw. Yeah, well, we had when Oben was alive, I had two cats, and one of them in particular, Roddy the cat, very close with Oben. They slept together in Oben's bed. They would groom each other endlessly. Roddy and Oben were really, really close. And when Oben died, Roddy was just not himself. He was obviously going through a loss. He would look for Oben. He would cry. It was heartrending. Non-human creatures experience grief, maybe not the same way as humans, but there is something that happens there. So we thought, when we eventually adopted another dog, that Roddy would be happy.
Yeah.
But Roddy really didn't like the new dog. And it took about 6 months for him to accept the new dog. So it wasn't about, oh, he's a cat that likes dogs. He was a cat that had a specific relationship with a dog. And that wasn't going to, that in his life, however he was perceiving it, that emptiness that he had after Oben died wasn't just a dog-shaped hole that you could just plug any other dog into. He was very specific about where his affection was going. And it was a full 6 months before he came to accept Lola as a friend. And then they became pretty good friends. But, and then when Roddy passed away, Lola, you could see her grieving quite clearly. You could see her grieving. It's more, maybe it's because as humans we're more attuned to canine cues. Our evolution has been more parallel and maybe more codependent, but it was more conspicuous to us that Lola was very much experiencing grief. Yeah, hard stuff.
Yeah, and it's a really good reminder how animals are, we do consider sometimes they're just pets, or they're just kind of these other creatures that are living on this planet, but they're just as emotional and complex as us, and they also have mind, body, and souls, like we do. So we need to respect them as as such, and engage with them as such as well on all of these different layers. So
Yeah,
sorry.
In my book, A Witch's Ally, I talk about the writings of Jacob von Uexhill. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly because I've only ever read it. I've never actually heard a German speaker say it properly. And he was a biologist who wrote about what he came to call the Umwelt theory, that every living creature lives in its own bubble of perception, and all around us, every creature that is alive has this bubble of perception around them. And as human beings, we have a very human-centric view of the world, and it has been very convenient for us to forget the umwelts of other creatures because we need them to serve us. We need to eat them. We need to use them for their muscles or their flesh. It's a lot easier for us to cope if we set aside the personalities and complexities and sovereignty of other creatures, right? We've been trained and indoctrinated into this idea that we are the superior race and everything else is here just for our luxury, resource, and service. So in reading about the work that this biologist did, this Jacob von Uexhill, I really came to a place where I could see the magic in that, the magic of everything around me existing in its own sort of self-absorbed, centric world. I don't know if Georgia understands that I have a different realm of perception around me than she has around her. I don't know if the squirrel that's running on my roof right now, I can hear little feet on the eaves just outside my window here. I don't know if that squirrel has the capacity or the interest in understanding that, the weird biped in the dwelling underneath his feet has a different way of viewing the world. But I really enjoy the fact that those bubbles of perception are all around us constantly. I think of the world now as kind of like a big tub of soapy water with all those bubbles coexisting and being all around each other all the time. And I guess in some places there are certain senses that we have that match those of the animals in our environments. Mm-hmm. I think one of the magical things about dogs is that it's probably one of the more understood intersections between humans and animals. We see dogs in our homes. Images of dogs are all around us all the time. Driving down the road, you'll see a billboard or something with a canine image on it. And then the wild versions of dogs that live in our environments. I have foxes in my neighborhood, and they're kind of interesting and somewhat mysterious because I only really see them, in those liminal times of day, of dawn and dusk, and they have their own way of perceiving. So the canine is really relatable to us, and it's a good starting point for forming a relationship with, animals, living animals in this world, but also animals in the spirit realm for sure. It's a great entry level starting point because it's so familiar and it's such a well-established relationship.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so if someone's been really inspired by this in our audience and wants to connect to dog as their spirit guide perhaps, or just wants to kind of deepen their connection to dog, what would be like your number one tip or tool to do so?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty practical when it comes to my witchcraft and my magic. It's like, start in this world. Start by understanding the habits and behavior of dogs in this world. And then through whatever magical practices you have, whether you do divination or meditation or spell work, start incorporating what you know about physical world dogs into the metaphysical and looking at those traits as symbols for outcomes you want you to have in your magic or in that relationship. You know, having an animal familiar that is a dog, trying to attract a dog that is in spirit, they're going to have the same personalities and behaviors as dogs in the physical, right? They're still dogs. The animals that exist in the ether are still those animals, and may in fact be the spirits of deceased physical animals from this world, but now they're in a different form. So start with what you know about the animal, any animal, and then go from there. You know, dogs like routine. Dogs like interaction. They like to be like have stimulation, and that's going to exist on the spirit side of things as well.
Yeah, so make sure you bring treats.
100%. Absolutely bring treats.
Got some bone offerings out.
Yeah.
Always at 4 o'clock.
Well, but being regular with that.
Yeah.
And being reliable with that, you know, with your attempts to connect, leaving offerings, you know, leaving water out for that spirit as an offering. It's, you know, environmentally safe, you know, and a dog is a dog is a dog. It doesn't matter what world they live in. They're going to like dog stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been very insightful, and I loved all the stories that you've shared as well. Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing forth the wisdom and the magic and the medicine of dogs. So if anybody in our audience watching this video has any further questions or wants Dodie to elaborate on anything, please do just pop it down in the comments. If you'd like to know anything more, or even just your biggest takeaway, the thing that you've loved the most, or you can even please do share pictures of your dogs, because we definitely want to see them. As many dog pictures as we can get. So thank you, Dodie, for being here, and thank you for everything that you have shared.
Thank you. Very good to see you. And Georgia likes it too.
Oh, that's the thing, is they look so cute. You just want to cuddle them all, and you're like, I'm going to hug you. You can have your belly rub after, but I'm hugging you first. Wonderful. So thank you for watching, everybody that's watching here, and do check out all the other videos, because there are many videos of many animals, you know, that you can connect to, maybe just see what you're curious about, and just stand in witness of all of the magic and medicine that animals bring to us. And I'm sure you'll be inspired by what's there. So thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next episode.